The chill in the air was palpable, almost biting. Around the room, the hushed symphony of medical equipment provided a low hum. Philanthropist Richard Vance lay utterly still on the sterile bed, a network of tubes tethering him to life support machines. An oxygen mask obscured his face, a fragile barrier against the brink. Outside the closed door, doctors spoke in hushed tones, their faces etched with a grim defeat. Then, a voice, soft as a spring breeze, drifted into the room. It wasn't the measured tone of a medical professional. It was a child. A small, barefoot girl, no older than 10, stood beside Richard's bed. Her simple, earth-tone dress, smudged with dust, hung loosely on her slender frame. Her dark, untamed curls framed a face that bore the faint shadows of hunger. Yet, her voice, it was an ethereal melody, unlike anything the medical staff had ever heard. With eyes closed, she sang, a pure, unadorned song, no accompanying music, just her voice, rising and falling like a gentle whisper, a heartfelt prayer echoing through the room. A tremor went through Richard's finger. Then his hand, impossibly, stirred. A sharp intake of breath escaped a nurse standing by the door. The attending physician, who had all but surrendered hope, took a hesitant step closer. A cough. A slow flutter of eyelids. Richard Vance, who had resisted every treatment for weeks, was awake. And his gaze was fixed on the small girl beside his bed. 3 days prior, 10-year-old Lily darted through the bustling, unpaved lanes of a chaotic marketplace in Port Haven. Her bare feet navigated around muddy puddles and discarded debris, a wicker basket of ripe mangoes balanced precariously on her head. The searing Port Haven sun beat down, coating her face in a fine sheen of sweat. But she didn't falter. This was her life now. Everything had changed 2 years ago. Her parents, gone, swallowed by a car crash that, by all accounts, should have claimed her too. Yet, she emerged without a single scratch. Instead of a miracle, her extended family saw something else. A curse, Aunt Beatrice had declared at the funeral, her arms crossed, her back turned to the child. She killed them. Did you see the wreck? And not a drop of blood on her. That day, Lily's last thread of connection to love, to family, to any sense of security, snapped. Unwanted, unaided, she was left with nothing. Lily dropped out of school, finding refuge on the streets, carrying heavy loads for merchants in the market for a few coppers, just enough to buy a small plate of stew and a cup of water. But Lily possessed one extraordinary gift, her voice. Each night, as the city slept, Lily would sing beneath the old bridge where she and other street children sought shelter. She sang to soothe her pain, to feel closer to her lost parents, to drown out the cruel whispers that haunted her dreams. And sometimes, passers-by would pause, tears streaming down their faces. A woman once told her, "Your voice touches the soul." Lily clung to those words. She'd had a vivid dream once, of singing to a dying man and bringing him back to life. He'd smiled, placed a hand on her head, and said, "You are more powerful than you think." The dream never left her, and perhaps that was why she found herself wandering into the gleaming Zenith Medical Center that Wednesday morning. She hadn't eaten since the previous night and hoped a kind soul at the entrance might spare her a few coins for bread. As she neared the reception area, she overheard a woman whispering to a man in scrubs. "They say he won't last the day," the woman murmured sadly. "It's like he's given up." "Grief can be more potent than any illness," the man replied. After losing his wife and daughter, he simply stopped fighting. "Who is it?" Lily asked softly, stepping forward. The woman turned, blinking at the small girl. "What are you doing here?" "I came to beg, Ma," Lily replied. "But I heard what you said about the man." The man raised an eyebrow. "What about him?" "I can help him," Lily said simply. They both stared. The man chuckled, turning back to his clipboard. "How?" the woman asked, intrigued. "I will sing for him," Lily said. "If it's sadness, my song can reach his spirit." The man burst into laughter. Her. With her torn dress and dirty feet? But the woman didn't laugh. She studied Lily, noticing the quiet certainty in her eyes. The girl was serious. It can't hurt to try, the woman said slowly. Ma'am, the man warned. It won't cost us anything, she countered. And perhaps, just perhaps. And so, Lily found herself being led down the long corridor of the hospital, past gleaming white tiles and glass walls. Nurses whispered, and people stared. Who is this beggar girl? What is she doing here? They entered the exclusive suite where Richard Vance, one of Porthaven's most private and reclusive philanthropists, lay unconscious. He had been there for 2 weeks, refusing visitors, rejecting food, uttering no words. Since the fiery crash that claimed his wife and daughter 2 years ago, the man had been hollowed out. Money couldn't save him. Doctors couldn't reach him. He had instructed his lawyers to prepare his will. He was ready to die. And now, this orphaned girl stood beside him. Her tiny hand gently touched the metal rail of the hospital bed. Then, she closed her eyes and began to sing. And what happened next changed everything. The song began as a low murmur, like the first breath of dawn. Lily's eyes remained closed, her lips barely moving, yet each note seemed imbued with a radiant warmth. The oppressive silence in the room shifted, the air, once heavy with the scent of sickness and despair, now felt strangely light. The female doctor by the door froze. The male nurse who had scoffed earlier found himself drawn closer, almost against his will. And then, Richard's fingers twitched. Did you see that? The doctor whispered. No, likely muscle spasms, the nurse replied, though his voice wavered. But it wasn't. Lily continued to sing, her voice rising gently, the words like whispers of solace. Even if the stars forget to shine, there's a light still burning deep inside. Don't go where we cannot follow. Come back. Come home. Then, with a sudden, ragged gasp, Richard coughed. Everyone jumped. His eyelids fluttered. His head turned slightly. One finger lifted, slowly curling inward like a fragile promise. Mr. Vance. The doctor rushed to his side, stethoscope already pressed to his chest. His heart rate just improved. Pulse strengthening. My God. The nurse hurried out to summon more staff. But Lily didn't move. She kept singing, her voice calm and imbued with something no one could quite define, but they felt it: love, peace, hope. By the time the third verse slipped from her lips, Richard's eyes slowly opened. He blinked against the bright overhead lights, looking for a moment like a man awakening from the longest sleep of his life. Then, his gaze found her, a barefoot child with dust-smudged feet and eyes full of an inexplicable light. He didn't speak. He just stared. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. And Lily, still singing, offered a gentle smile. It was the first time someone had smiled at him without pity in 2 years. By the following morning, news had ripped through the hospital like a gale. The philanthropist has awakened. They say a street girl healed him with her voice. A miracle child. Doctors and nurses were bewildered. Journalists began to circle the hospital gates, hungry for the story. But only a select few truly understood what had transpired in that quiet hospital room. As for Lily, she was given a room with a real bed for the first time in years. The hospital director arranged for 3 nourishing meals a day. They even gave her a clean dress. But Lily asked for little. She had only one request. Can I sing for him again? Over the next 2 days, Lily visited Richard every morning and evening. She didn't speak much. She simply held his hand and sang. Sometimes he would drift off peacefully. Other times, he would open his eyes and gaze at her, as if her voice stirred a forgotten memory within him, something lost, something worth clinging to. On the 3rd morning, Richard spoke. His voice was quiet, raspy, but it was speech. He said, I don't know who you are, but your voice, it found me. Lily's eyes widened. You're awake. Richard managed a weak smile. I'm not dead, am I? She shook her head. You didn't let me die. No, sir, she whispered. Because I still need you. Someone in this world still needs you. Richard closed his eyes, and tears traced paths down his cheeks. For the first time in years, he wanted to live. Meanwhile, across the city, Lily's name began to surface in hushed conversations. In the bustling market, people whispered, that little girl who used to carry vegetables for Madame Kemi, she's the one they say healed the philanthropist. Some scoffed, others believed, but none of her so-called relatives knew yet. Back at the hospital, a private meeting was held. The hospital director, the female doctor, and Mr. Vance's private lawyer gathered behind closed doors. She has no family, no schooling. She's been living under the bridge, the doctor explained. Richard, now sitting upright in his hospital bed, gazed out the window. And yet, she gave me more life than any medicine could. The lawyer leaned forward. Are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Richard nodded. She saved me. Now it's my turn to save her. But just as the room filled with a fragile hope, a sharp knock came at Lily's hospital room door. It was a woman in a garish dress, her face heavily made up, her eyes glinting with a harsh resentment. Where's that girl? She demanded of the nurse, her tone sharp. Lily, her name is Lily. I'm her auntie. The nurse blinked. And you are? I'm her blood, her only family. I want to see her now. But Lily, from behind the privacy curtain, had already recognized that voice. She froze, her hands trembling. Aunt Beatrice had found her. The same woman who had branded her a curse. The same woman who had abandoned her at a graveside and never looked back. And now, she was back. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. She couldn't breathe. That voice, sharp, demanding, and full of bitterness, ripped through the hallway like a storm. Aunt Beatrice was here. The same woman who had pointed at her parents' funeral, eyes burning with hatred, and spat the words that still haunted her dreams, you're a curse. A child like you doesn't survive a crash like that unless there's something dark in her. Lily had never forgotten it. And now, that same woman stood outside her hospital room, feigning concern. She's my niece. Beatrice shouted at the nurse. Let me see her. I beg you. I've been looking for her for years. The nurse remained unconvinced. She's resting. She just helped a patient recover. We don't allow visitors without clearance. Clearance? Beatrice hissed. I am her blood. Behind the thin curtain, Lily gripped the hospital bedsheet, her legs feeling like jelly. She had faced hunger, torrential rains, cruel strangers. But this was the one person who had truly broken her spirit. Suddenly, the door swung wider. A tall man in an expensive dark suit walked in. His presence was quiet, yet utterly commanding. It was Mr. Vance. No longer weak or silent, he stood tall, his eyes alert and clear. The machines had been disconnected from his body, his health had returned almost miraculously. Excuse me, he said politely to Beatrice. You say you're this girl's relative? Beatrice turned to him, recognizing the prominent philanthropist instantly. Her eyes widened. Ah, Mr. Vance, God has saved you. Praise be. He offered no smile. Who are you again? I'm Lily's auntie, she said quickly, her tone softening dramatically. Her only family. I've been so worried. I heard the news and rushed right over. Richard looked at her carefully. Where have you been for the last 2 years? Beatrice blinked. 2. I didn't know where she was. He cut her off. Funny. The girl who saved my life told me her family left her to suffer, that they called her names, that they abandoned her like trash. You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you? Beatrice's smile faltered. Ah, sir. You know children can say anything. From behind the curtain, Lily stepped forward. Her voice was soft, but it cut through the room like a sharp blade. She's lying. Beatrice turned sharply. Her eyes met Lily's for the first time in 2 years. The girl had changed. She wasn't just a dirty market child anymore. She stood with quiet strength, wearing clean clothes, her hair neatly combed, her eyes fierce yet calm. You called me a curse, Lily said. You said I killed my parents. You left me to die. Beatrice tried to recover. Lily, I was in pain. We all were. I didn't mean it. You meant every word. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Then Richard spoke again. Leave this hospital, ma'am. Now. The security guards by the door didn't wait for Beatrice to argue. They guided her out gently but firmly. Her voice echoed down the hall. You'll regret this, Lily. Blood is blood. He will use you and dump you. But Lily didn't flinch. She stood straight. And when Richard placed a hand on her shoulder, she didn't pull away. You're safe now, he said quietly. That night, Richard invited Lily to his private lounge at the hospital, a spacious room filled with books and calming music. She sat on a plush chair, legs folded beneath her, sipping warm milk. Lily, he said, watching her intently. Tell me something. Why did you sing for me? She thought for a moment. Because I saw myself in you. I know how it feels to want to give up. His throat tightened as she continued. But I had a dream. I saw a man dying. I sang for him. He came back to life. I knew it was real. Richard nodded slowly. It was. You healed something deeper than my body. You healed my spirit. They sat in silence for a while. Then he smiled gently. What would you do if you could be anything in the world? Her eyes lit up for the first time. I want to fly, she said. Not just sing. I want to be a pilot. I want to see the skies my parents never got to see. Richard looked at her as if she were the most beautiful answer to every prayer he had never dared to utter. Then I'll make it happen. The next morning, the paperwork was signed. Richard officially adopted Lily. He released a press statement, stunning the nation. The girl who saved me is now my daughter. I owe her my life, and now she will have hers back. Citizens across the country went wild online. Miracle child. Lily the angel. From beggar to blessed. But as Lily moved into the lavish mansion, enrolled in the best school, and began learning to fly, not everyone was happy. From the shadows, Uncle Victor, Richard's estranged cousin, watched the news with narrowed eyes. So the old man brought a street waif into his will, he muttered. His assistant remained silent. Let's see how long this miracle girl lasts, Victor said coldly. I've waited too long to lose everything to a street child. He picked up his phone, and somewhere in Port Haven, a dark plan began to take shape. For the first time in her life, Lily had a door she could lock, a bed that smelled of lavender, a room with stars that glowed on the ceiling. Each night, she stared at them before falling asleep, reminding herself it wasn't a dream. Every morning, she awoke in the opulent Seaside Heights mansion, bathed in sunlight, wrapped in soft blankets. She wasn't dodging rainwater under the bridge anymore. She wasn't carrying crates in the market. She wasn't begging for leftover stew. She was Lily Vance, adopted daughter of billionaire CEO Richard Vance. More than that, she was a student pilot, already mastering simulators with adult-level precision. Her voice, still soft and soul-deep, now reached thousands. Richard helped her establish a small digital platform called Voice of Hope, where people battling depression could listen, find solace, and weep. She had hope, she had purpose, she had family. But just when the skies seemed brightest, the darkness came knocking again. It started subtly. One evening, while Lily was reading in her room, one of the maids brought her a plate of rice and beans. She was about to take the first spoonful when something felt off. The smell was too sharp. Her stomach churned. She gently placed the spoon down and called the chef, Mr. Ade, who rushed up in a panic. He took one whiff and immediately frowned. "Madam Lily," he said, "this rice, it's not right. Something is wrong." The rice was immediately sent to the family doctor. Traces of a common rodenticide were found. Everyone was stunned. Richard was furious. He called an emergency meeting with the entire staff. "Whoever touched this plate before it got to her, speak now." But no one did. The kitchen cameras were mysteriously disabled. The maid who served the food was gone, she had resigned that same night and vanished. Lily's hands shook the next day. She stayed indoors. For the first time since her adoption, she didn't sing. Meanwhile, in a small, dusty compound in Oakhaven, Uncle Victor leaned back in his chair, sipping palm wine. His phone buzzed. He smiled. "Tell me," he said. "Did it reach her?" A voice on the line replied, "No. She didn't eat it. Something went wrong." Victor slammed his glass down. "Then make sure the next one works. That girl is standing in the way of everything I've built for. That fortune belongs to me." For years, Victor had waited for Richard to break, to die. He'd watched his cousin waste away after losing his wife and daughter. He was next in line. He had prepared for it. But then this child had appeared from nowhere, a street girl, a nobody, now living in the mansion, bearing Richard's name, wearing his late daughter's clothes, being groomed to take over his foundation. No, Victor would not allow it. Days later, Lily began to notice strange occurrences. Her flight simulator login was suddenly disabled due to suspicious access attempts. Her favorite teddy bear, one her father had given her, was found torn in half. Her few precious childhood photos, hidden in a drawer, were soaked in water. It was too much to be coincidence. Richard noticed the changes in her. She was quieter, less playful. She stopped humming in the corridors. He sat beside her on her bed one night. "Lily," he said softly. "What's going on?" She looked at him with tired eyes. "I think someone's trying to hurt me." He nodded slowly. "I know." Her breath caught. "You do?" "I've received 2 anonymous threats in the past week. First, they warned me to send you back to the street. Then, they said next time it won't just be rice." "Who's doing this?" Richard clenched his jaw. "I have a strong suspicion. And if I'm right, he's not finished." Just when things couldn't get more tense, a major twist shook the entire household. Richard collapsed during a board meeting. He was rushed to the hospital. The media went wild. Billionaire CEO rushed to ICU again. Vance's health crisis. Is this the end? Lily didn't leave his side for a second. She sang. She prayed. She held his hand just as she had the first time. But this time, he wasn't waking up. And worse, in the midst of that chaos, Victor made his move. At the mansion, a group of lawyers arrived unannounced. They claimed there was a revised will Richard had signed weeks ago. In it, the entire fortune was to be transferred to a new trustee, Victor, until Lily turned 21. All business decisions would go through him. All assets, all shares. The staff protested. The family doctor called bluff. But the documents looked legitimate. Suddenly, Lily was no longer the young heiress. She was a powerless girl in the mansion, living under the rule of a man who despised her. That night, Victor arrived with suitcases. "Your daddy's weak again," he said, smiling coldly. And until he's gone, everything here belongs to me. Lily stood in the hallway, watching the monster walk into her home. Her safe place was no longer safe. And this time, singing might not be enough. The atmosphere inside the mansion had changed. It was no longer warm and welcoming, now it felt tight, cold, like the held breath of someone waiting to pounce. Uncle Victor strode through the halls like a king reclaiming his stolen throne. He ordered the staff around, rearranged rooms, and even had the family portrait, where Lily stood smiling between Richard and his late wife's painting, taken down. "This house needs cleansing," he said mockingly. "Too much false energy." Lily said nothing. She had learned silence was sometimes stronger than tears. But deep down, something inside her began to stir. It wasn't fear. It was a simmering fire. Richard remained unconscious in the hospital. The doctors did their best, but the immense stress had worsened his condition. His blood pressure was unstable, his breathing shallow. Lily visited every day. She held his hand just like before. But this time, she didn't sing. Something in her heart felt broken. "What if it doesn't work this time?" she whispered to him, her voice trembling. "What if I lose you, too?" She felt like that 10-year-old girl again, standing at her parents' funeral with nobody beside her. That night, when she returned to the mansion, her old street instincts kicked in. She couldn't sleep. She walked quietly past the guest wing, Victor's wing, and saw a sliver of light under his door. Voices. She crept closer. "When he dies, everything is mine," Victor was saying on the phone. "The new will is already signed and in place. The girl, I'll send her back to wherever I found her." A pause. "I don't care what it takes. Richard must not wake up." Lily's stomach dropped. It was never about her. It was always about the money, the forged will, the threats, the poisoning. It all made sense now. She ran, not to hide, but to fight. The next morning, the mansion was abuzz with activity. Lily stepped into the grand hallway in a clean white dress. Her hair was neatly styled, her eyes fierce with purpose. She held something in her hand, a small recording device. Behind her stood the family lawyer, Mr. Adebayo, and a police officer. "Uncle Victor," she said calmly. "You're finished." He turned from the dining table, confused. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Then she pressed the play button. Victor's voice filled the room. "When he dies, everything is mine. I don't care what it takes. Richard must not wake up." Everyone froze. The lawyer's mouth dropped open. "So, the new will is a fraud." The police officer stepped forward. "Sir, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted poisoning, and forgery." No, this is a setup." Victor yelled, but it was too late. He was handcuffed and dragged out of the house, screaming. As the doors shut behind him, Lily exhaled deeply. The chains were broken, but one more thing remained. That evening, Lily returned to the hospital. She stepped into Richard's room quietly. Machines beeped steadily. The doctor had said he had 48 hours left if there was no change. She pulled up a chair, took his hand, and for the first time in days, she began to sing. This time, her voice was different, stronger, clearer, like sunlight breaking through a thick storm. "You gave me a name when I had none. You gave me a home when I was cold. Now don't go where I can't follow. There's still laughter here, still skies to fly." And just like before, his fingers moved. Her voice didn't stop. She sang until his chest began to rise deeper, until his eyelids fluttered, until he opened his eyes and whispered, "Lily." Tears ran down her face. "You came back to me," he said weakly. "I never left," she whispered, holding him tight.